Some people wait their entire lives for motivation to arrive, like it's a divine force that appears in a flash of lightning. But what if the truth is more uncomfortable than that? What if motivation doesn't come first, but only after you act? What if the hardest things in your life, the goals you keep avoiding, the conversations you keep postponing, the habits you keep breaking, aren't difficult because they're impossible, but because you've been trained by your own brain to run from the discomfort before you even try? There's a quiet truth that most people never learn. Your brain is not designed to make you happy. It's designed to keep you alive, and that means avoiding pain, uncertainty, and change at all costs. But here's the paradox. The exact things your brain resists are the very things that shape you into someone strong, focused, and alive. And unless you learn how to override this built-in resistance, you'll always find yourself retreating when life asks you to rise. In today's episode, we're going to explore a method I call the Lotus Path, a mindset rooted in Stoicism, Eastern philosophy, and modern behavioral psychology. Like the lotus flower that pushes through mud to reach the light, you too have the capacity to rise. Not by brute force, not by pretending you're fearless, but by training your mind to do hard things, especially when every part of you wants to quit. You'll learn how to dissolve resistance, reprogram excuses, and build a system of action that moves you forward, even in silence. This isn't about hype or hustle. It's about awakening the part of you that's built for growth, for discomfort, for greatness. So if you've ever looked at a goal and whispered, "I wish I had the discipline for that," this episode is your answer, because you don't need more willpower. You just need a system that makes doing hard things feel like second nature. 1. Face the resistance head-on. Every time you try to grow, there's a quiet war that starts inside you. It's not loud, it doesn't scream, it whispers. Not now. You're not ready. Start tomorrow. That voice lives inside all of us. It's ancient, it's primal. It's the part of the brain that evolved to keep us alive, not to help us evolve. And if you listen to it without challenging it, you'll mistake that whisper for truth. You'll think hesitation is a sign to stop, but it isn't. It's a sign to begin. The Stoics had a word for this kind of inner battle, prohairesis, the power to choose your response, even in the presence of fear, pain, or hesitation. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. He didn't say, "Don't feel resistance." He said, "Remember that you're bigger than it." Most people think resistance is a stop sign, but what if it's just a doorway? Imagine standing in front of a heavy, rusted door. You push, it doesn't budge, so you assume it's locked. But in truth, you just didn't push long enough. That's what resistance is. It's your brain testing you, not blocking you. The moment you push past the first few seconds of friction, when you sit down to write, when you put your shoes on to go to the gym, when you open that book instead of scrolling, you begin to rewire your mind. Because here's the trick. Your brain isn't built to do hard things by default. It's built to survive. That means it avoids discomfort, pain, failure, and change, because those things used to mean danger, but today they mean growth. And you can't evolve while obeying a system designed to protect you from transformation. You have to override it, like a pilot manually flying through turbulence, not because the autopilot failed, but because the storm is necessary. Behavioral psychology supports this. Studies show that the hardest part of any action is not the action itself, it's the start. The initiation threshold, as it's called, is the psychological barrier that feels massive until you move. And the moment you do, that weight lifts. Motivation follows motion, not the other way around. You act first. Then clarity and momentum catch up. This is why the Lotus Method begins here. Before you can glow up, rebrand, or reinvent your life, you have to stare down the resistance, not with arrogance, but with awareness. You say, I see you. I hear the voice that says I can't. But I'm not asking for your permission. And then you move, one small step, one representative, one line, one conversation. That's the ignition. In time, that step becomes a pattern. The resistance shrinks, and what once felt impossible becomes your new baseline. So here's your challenge. The next time your brain whispers, don't start, smile. Not because it's easy, but because you now know. It's the signal. It means go. 2. Reprogram your brain's excuses. Your brain is not lazy, it's protective. It wants to shield you from pain, failure, judgment, and effort. So every time you're about to do something difficult, something uncomfortable, something new, it offers you an escape. You're tired. You'll do better tomorrow. This probably won't work anyway. These aren't just random thoughts. They're deeply wired excuses designed by evolution. And they work if you don't reprogram them. We often forget that our brains are programmable machines. Not in the literal sense, but in the psychological sense. Every time you repeat a behavior, you reinforce a neural pathway. The more you act on excuses, the more automatic they become. It's like digging a trench. One shallow pass doesn't do much, but do it every day, and suddenly that trench is so deep, your thoughts can't help but fall into it. That's how procrastination becomes a personality trait. Not because you were born that way, but because your brain learned over time that avoidance was rewarded with comfort. But here's the secret. The exact same brain that learned how to avoid effort can unlearn it. And that starts by linking effort with something new, not pain, not shame, but reward. This is what behavioral science calls operant conditioning. If your brain believes that doing the hard thing will lead to pride, growth, relief, or even joy, it starts to rewire. The same way Pavlov's dog started salivating at the sound of a bell, your brain can be trained to crave discomfort if it's consistently followed by internal reward. And here's where Stoicism becomes your ally. Epictetus said, "What ought one to say then as each hardship comes? I was practicing for this. I was training for this." That's not just a mindset. It's a reframe. It tells your brain, this struggle isn't punishment, it's practice. This resistance isn't a red light, it's the gym. Your discomfort isn't failure, it's feedback that growth is happening. The Lotus Method borrows from this same logic. A lotus doesn't bloom by escaping the mud, it uses it. The muck, the pressure, the darkness, all of it becomes fuel for its rise. And your excuses? They're your mental mud. They look ugly, feel sticky, and make movement hard. But if you sit with them, face them, and repurpose them, they become the very reason you grow. So the question is, what is your brain trying to protect you from? Embarrassment? Judgment? Falling short? Identify it. Name it. Because clarity breaks the illusion. Most people are scared of things they've never even clearly defined. They say, "I'm scared of failing," but when you ask what failure looks like, they don't know. And when you define your fear, it shrinks. When you name your excuse, it loses its grip. From there, it's about creating small evidence loops. Every time you do something you don't feel like doing and reward yourself afterward, even mentally, you start to associate effort with empowerment. You begin to realize, I didn't die. In fact, I feel proud, and that pride is more addictive than comfort ever was. You don't need to erase all your excuses. That's impossible. What you need is to notice them and act anyway. And over time, those same thoughts will show up, but they'll have no power. Like ghosts in daylight, they'll appear, and you'll smile, because you've trained your brain to know effort equals freedom. So the next time your brain whispers a reason to quit, thank it. Then take the step anyway, and watch how fast that old voice starts losing its influence, because you're replacing it with something stronger. Truth earned through action. 3. Flow with life, Wu Wei. We live in a world that worships struggle. We're taught to hustle, to grind, to force our way through every challenge with sheer willpower. But what if that very approach is what's exhausting you? What if your resistance is not a sign of weakness, but a signal you're moving against the natural current of life? There's a powerful idea from ancient Taoist philosophy called Wu Wei, often misunderstood as doing nothing. But it's not about laziness. It's about effortless action, acting in harmony with the flow, not in constant resistance to it. Stoicism, though rooted in a different tradition, surprisingly echoes this truth. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Nature adapts itself to its own purpose and situation." The Stoics taught us to align ourselves with the logos, the rational order of the universe. In other words, stop fighting reality, start flowing with it. Let's translate that to doing hard things. When you're trying to force your way through a difficult task, and every fiber of your body is saying no, you might think you just need more grit. But what if, instead, you paused and looked for the path of least internal resistance? What if you shifted from forcing yourself into action to aligning your thoughts, your body, and your intention in a way that invites action, not fights it? This doesn't mean avoiding challenge. It means shifting your relationship to it. It means understanding that the resistance you feel doesn't always come from the task itself, but from your inner friction, your inner war. Wu Wei is the art of removing that friction. It's how the lotus grows through mud without fighting the mud. It doesn't rage against the darkness. It simply rises, slowly, consistently, because it's designed to. Practically, this could mean changing your self-talk. Instead of saying, "I have to do this," you begin with, "I get to do this because it leads somewhere I want to go." It could mean designing your day in a way that honors your rhythms, putting your hardest task during your peak energy hours. It could mean asking, "How can I do this with more grace, more presence, more focus?" And it often means letting go of your obsession with outcomes. That's what kills flow. When you're focused on results, how it'll look, what others will think, whether it'll be perfect, you block yourself. You interrupt the process with anxiety. But when you surrender to the process, when you focus fully on doing, not judging, you enter a different mental space. Flow, clarity, movement. That's Wu Wei, and it's powerful. Stoic wisdom blends beautifully here. Epictetus said, "Don't demand that things happen as you wish, but wish them to happen as they do." This isn't passive acceptance, it's radical alignment. You no longer waste energy fighting how things are. You use that energy to move within what is, creating change from the inside out. Imagine this. Every time you face a hard task, instead of clenching your jaw and powering through it, you take a deep breath and ask, "How can I work with this moment, not against it?" That alone softens the mental resistance. It invites clarity, and from that calm clarity, action becomes easier. Not because it's suddenly fun or easy, but because you're not at war with it anymore. So if you've been forcing, pushing, burning out, try the opposite. Flow. Surrender not in weakness, but in strategy. Stop trying to bend life to your will. Instead, become like water. Adapt, shift, move forward. Not because you fought the current, but because you became one with it. 4. Stillness before action. In a world that's constantly rushing, we've confused speed with progress. We think acting fast is always better, that doing more means achieving more. But there's a hidden wisdom that both Stoics and Eastern philosophies like Taoism have long understood. Before every powerful action, there must be stillness, not hesitation, not procrastination, but intentional pause. The kind of pause that clears the mental noise, calms the nervous system, and aligns your energy with what truly matters. Most people try to do hard things while their mind is chaotic. They jump into tasks, stressed, scattered, half-focused. They push through, but every step feels heavy, every distraction more tempting. And it's not because the task is too big, it's because the mind isn't ready. You don't bring a storm into battle and expect clarity. You bring stillness. Before you do anything difficult, whether it's going to the gym, writing that important message, starting a new project, or ending a toxic habit, take 1 full minute of intentional stillness. Sit, breathe, slow everything down. This is not laziness. This is mental priming. Like a warrior sharpening his blade before entering the fight, you are sharpening your mind before the challenge. The Stoics called this premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of difficulty, but they didn't panic about it. They anticipated challenges calmly so they could meet them with strength. Seneca once said, "A man who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than necessary." The purpose of stillness is not to dwell, it's to see clearly, so you act with strength, not with fear. Stillness gives you 2 superpowers, focus and detachment. Focus because the mind naturally wants clarity, and stillness creates space for it. Detachment because when you pause, you stop reacting emotionally. You start responding consciously. That split second of calm between the urge and the action, that's where mastery lives. The Lotus Method you're learning here isn't about charging through life. It's about rising with elegance. The lotus doesn't leap from the mud. It rises slowly, in silence, with power, and it begins in stillness. So must you. Create a simple ritual. Before doing anything you resist, close your eyes for 60 seconds. Take deep breaths. Feel the resistance without judging it. Then ask, what is the next tiny step I can take from a place of strength? Not perfection, not pressure, just clarity. That's enough. In neuroscience, this pause taps into your parasympathetic nervous system, the system of calm and restoration. This shifts your brain away from fight or flight and into what's called executive function, the part of the brain responsible for planning, reasoning, and focus. In short, stillness makes your brain smarter. So next time you feel overwhelmed or frozen in front of something hard, don't reach for motivation or caffeine or willpower. Reach for stillness, get quiet, breathe, reset, then move. From that place, you'll act not from panic, but from power. 5. Discipline of daily rituals. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems, and if you don't have daily rituals, small, non-negotiable actions that anchor your day, then your brain will always default to the path of least resistance. That path rarely leads anywhere you want to go. But here's the secret. Discipline doesn't begin with massive effort. It begins with rhythm, repetition, ritual. Think about how monks, athletes, or elite performers build excellence. They don't rely on motivation. They don't wait to feel like it. They follow a rhythm so solid, so automatic, that action becomes their default. That's what we're aiming for here, and it doesn't have to be complex. In fact, the simpler, the better, because simplicity sustains. Your brain is like clay. It reshapes itself based on what you do repeatedly. Neuroscientists call this neuroplasticity. Every time you perform a habit, you reinforce a neural pathway. Miss it, and that path begins to fade. Repeat it, and it becomes a road your brain travels without friction. And when that habit is something hard, like waking up early, doing deep work, or pushing your body, then you're training your mind to associate discomfort with power, not pain. That's the real glow-up. Stoics didn't talk about routines the way we do now, but they lived by them. Marcus Aurelius wrote about rising early, enduring cold baths, and controlling his thoughts at dawn. These weren't productivity hacks. They were spiritual training. Because each daily discipline wasn't just about time management, it was about character development. And that's exactly how you must see your rituals. You're not just brushing your teeth or going for a run. You're carving discipline into your identity. Here's the trick. Start with just 3 rituals. 1 for your mind, 1 for your body, and 1 for your soul. For your mind, maybe it's 10 minutes of reading or journaling. For your body, 20 push-ups or a cold shower. For your soul, silence, reflection, a morning walk with no phone. These are not tasks, they are anchors, and when you repeat them daily, even if your whole day falls apart, you've already won. Why? Because you showed up for yourself. And it's that repetition, done daily, done deliberately, that builds the inner identity of someone who does hard things, not occasionally, not when they feel like it, but every single day. That's the kind of person who becomes unrecognizable in 90 days. Not because of some miracle, but because their rituals became sacred. Discipline isn't built in the gym or the boardroom. It's built the moment you open your eyes. What you do in that first hour tells your brain, we're serious or we're slipping, so make it count. Build a system so automatic it doesn't depend on motivation. A system so solid it works even on your worst day. That's when the transformation begins. 6. Start tiny, then expand. One of the biggest mistakes people make when trying to do hard things is aiming too high, too fast. They look at the mountain and think they have to scale it in a single leap. But that's not how the brain works. That's not how real transformation works. The Stoics understood this. So did modern psychologists like B.F. Skinner and James Clear. Real change doesn't begin with a massive decision. It begins with a micro-action. You want to train your mind to do something difficult? Start small. So small it almost feels silly. Want to write a book? Begin with 1 sentence. Want to run 5 miles? Just put on your shoes and walk to the door. That's it. Because what matters most isn't the size of the action. It's the shift in identity that begins the moment you start. That first step sends a signal to your brain. We are no longer who we used to be. We move now. And that movement creates momentum. Momentum creates belief. Belief creates discipline. But it all starts with that one tiny move. This is the Lotus Method in motion. The lotus doesn't explode from the mud in a day. It rises, inch by inch, through resistance, darkness, and pressure. That's how you must rise too. There's a psychological principle called the activation energy threshold. It's the mental energy required to begin a task. Hard things have high thresholds. That's why you procrastinate. But here's the trick. When you shrink the task into a 2-minute version, the threshold drops. Once you're in motion, the resistance fades. That's the hidden genius behind starting tiny. It's not about being lazy. It's about being strategic with your energy and building the habit of beginning. Think about it. Every great transformation story you admire didn't begin with perfection. It began with a push-up, a paragraph, a job application, a single refusal to stay stuck. The Lotus Method teaches us that deep change doesn't start loud. It starts low, in silence, with patience. But it starts. And here's what makes it powerful. Tiny actions compound. One page becomes a chapter. One healthy meal becomes a lifestyle. One small win becomes a daily rhythm. And within 90 days, if you stay consistent, you'll look back and barely recognize the version of yourself that used to struggle just to begin. So next time your mind says, "It's too hard," respond by making it easier to start. Don't ask, "Can I do it all?" Ask, "What's the smallest thing I can do right now that moves me 1 inch forward?" Then do it, every day. That's how you force your brain to do hard things, by making it easy to start and impossible to stop. 7. Visualize the reward, not the pain. The human mind is wired to avoid pain before it seeks pleasure. That's a survival mechanism. If something seems hard, dangerous, or uncomfortable, your brain instantly says no. But in the modern world, that mechanism often betrays us. It tricks us into choosing what's easy, not what's right. It convinces us to postpone growth simply because the path looks uncomfortable. But what if you trained your mind to see past the pain and into the reward? Visualization is not wishful thinking. It's brain training. Athletes use it. Navy SEALs use it. Stoics used it in a different form, premeditatio malorum, the rehearsal of adversity. But where the Stoics anticipated the worst to build strength, this technique flips the lens. It's about imagining the best after enduring the discomfort. It's about giving your brain a reason to move toward hardship rather than away from it. Close your eyes and see what happens after you do the hard thing. Imagine how your body will feel after the workout, the tension released, the strength gained. Picture the calm that comes after finishing a difficult conversation you've avoided. Feel the pride of writing that final sentence, closing the book, walking out of that room knowing you showed up differently. When you do this repeatedly, you override your brain's fear response. You teach it that discomfort is the gateway, not the enemy. Neuroscience backs this up. The brain doesn't fully distinguish between imagined experiences and real ones. So when you visualize yourself succeeding, especially after something hard, you begin to associate action with reward. This rewires the circuitry. What once looked like pain becomes a path to peace, power, or purpose. You can even use visual anchors. Set your phone wallpaper to something that represents your goal. Create a vision board, not full of fantasies, but of outcomes, the things that follow your consistency. Write down how you'll feel, who you'll become, what your life will look like. Then every time you hesitate, return to the image. Let it pull you through the pain. The lotus doesn't focus on the mud, it reaches for the sun. The Stoic doesn't dwell on the struggle. They visualize what virtue looks like once it's been forged through fire. You must do the same. Before you step into something hard, take 10 seconds. Not to complain, not to doubt, but to see. See the version of yourself that emerges once it's done. Doing hard things requires more than willpower. It requires purpose. And purpose grows when your mind is filled with reasons to act. Let the reward be the magnet. Let the vision be your fuel. 8. Turn pain into fuel. Most people run from pain, but the truth is, Pain is where growth hides. You can either let discomfort become the wall that stops you or the fire that pushes you, and that decision changes everything. When something feels hard, when your mind says, "I don't want to," that's not a signal to quit. It's a signal to pay attention, because in that precise moment, your identity is being shaped. Not when it's easy, not when it's convenient, but when it hurts. And you keep going anyway. The Stoics taught this long ago. Seneca wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body." That means the resistance you feel isn't your enemy, it's your teacher. The voice in your head saying, "This is too much," is the same one you need to conquer in order to evolve. You don't become resilient by avoiding pain. You become resilient by meeting it, enduring it, and using it. There's a mindset you need to build, one that doesn't ask, "How do I escape this?" but "How do I turn this into strength?" And the answer is always action. Every time you take a step into discomfort, you gain evidence. Evidence that you're stronger than yesterday. Evidence that pain didn't break you, it built you. That's how transformation happens, not in theory, not through books or thoughts, but in the gritty, uncomfortable moments when you choose to keep moving forward. Think of your body shaking during the last few reps in the gym. That's pain, but it's also the exact moment when muscle fibers grow. Think of the anxiety before a hard conversation, but the peace you feel after saying what needed to be said. Think of those days you didn't want to show up, but did anyway. That's the moment your character levels up. Pain is not just the cost of growth, it's the signal that growth is happening. The lotus flower, which this method is inspired by, doesn't bloom in clear water. It rises through mud, thick, messy, dark mud, and still it reaches for the light. The beauty of that metaphor isn't just poetic, it's practical. Your life will have mud, mental resistance, emotional chaos, physical exhaustion. But if you choose to rise through it instead of sink into it, something beautiful happens. You become the kind of person who doesn't need perfect conditions to grow. So next time something feels hard, next time your brain says, "This is too painful," pause, then reframe. Say to yourself, "This is proof, this is fuel, this is my training ground," and then move. Pain isn't the end of the path, it's the beginning of mastery. 9. Trust the process, not the timeline. There's a quiet kind of desperation that creeps in when we obsess over how long something is taking. We start to count days, compare progress, wonder why the results haven't arrived yet. But here's a truth most people miss. Growth doesn't follow your schedule. Real transformation moves underground before it blooms. It's like planting a seed. You water it, you tend to the soil, but for weeks, nothing. And if you're impatient, you might assume nothing's happening. But beneath the surface, roots are taking hold. A foundation is being built. And the same is true for you. In Stoic philosophy, Epictetus warned us not to attach our peace to things outside our control. And time is one of them. You can't force life to move faster, but you can show up with discipline every day. You can trust the process, even when you can't see the outcome, because that's where inner power lives, not in results, but in consistency. The moment you detach from needing fast results, you become dangerous, calm, focused, patiently unstoppable. Think about the lotus again. It doesn't sprout overnight. It rises slowly through murky waters, untouched by the filth around it. You can't rush that, and you shouldn't, because what's built slowly is built to last. When you force the timeline, you get temporary wins. But when you trust the process, you build something real, something that stays. Look around and you'll see people starting and quitting, chasing dopamine, not transformation. You'll see people give up on day 20 because the mirror didn't change or the scale didn't move. But the wise? They're the ones who stay the course. They're the ones who keep showing up even when it looks like nothing's happening. Because they know the mud is part of the path. The plateau is part of the climb. The silence is part of the song. Your brain will try to convince you otherwise. It'll whisper, "This is pointless. It's not working." But that's just fear in disguise. Your job is not to entertain it. Your job is to keep doing what you said you would do. You don't need proof today. You need faith in the process. The lotus doesn't ask for guarantees. It just grows. So here's the mindset shift. Fall in love with the doing, not the deadline. Celebrate the day you showed up, not the day you got rewarded. Let the world rush. Let others quit. You stay rooted in the process and trust that everything you're becoming is already on its way. 10. Celebrate small wins. We live in a world that glorifies the finish line, the big transformation, the final result, the viral success. But what if I told you that real change, the kind that actually lasts, comes not from one massive moment, but from the quiet consistency of small wins? You don't become powerful by doing something great once. You become powerful by doing something slightly better every single day and acknowledging it. Your brain is wired to seek reward. When you do something hard and don't give yourself credit, you weaken the circuit. But when you celebrate, even just a little, you reinforce the belief that this effort matters. That's how you rewire your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries and start seeing yourself as someone who wins, one disciplined action at a time. Too often we wait for some mythical milestone to feel proud. We say, "I'll be happy when I lose 20 pounds," or "I'll feel successful when I make 6 figures." But that mindset is a trap, because when you reach those goals, your brain moves the bar again. You feel the same emptiness, only now it's dressed in achievement. The Stoics knew this trap well. They taught that progress lies in virtue, not vanity. Marcus Aurelius said, "Don't waste time imagining the perfect life. Act on the one in front of you." Every moment you do something difficult, something aligned with your purpose, you've already won. The victory is in the action. So celebrate showing up. Celebrate saying no to distraction. Celebrate when you take a cold shower, when you finish that workout, when you read instead of scrolling, when you say no to drama. Those aren't small, they're everything, because those tiny acts are the bricks of the new life you're building. You don't need a parade, you don't need applause, you just need to notice it, write it down, take a picture, say to yourself, "That was hard, and I did it." That quiet recognition lights a fire in your brain. It gives you a reason to come back tomorrow, and the day after that. Remember this: the person who transforms in 90 days is not the one who waits for a breakthrough. It's the one who smiles after every step, no matter how small. That's what keeps the momentum alive. That's how you glow up, not once, but for good. So today, ask yourself, what's one thing I did right? Even if it's just waking up on time or resisting an old habit, mark it, celebrate it, because that's how you teach your brain to love the process. And once you love the process, nothing can stop you. If you want to become unrecognizable in 90 days, it won't happen because of luck. It won't be some random breakthrough. It won't come from watching more videos, reading more quotes, or waiting for the right time. It happens when you finally decide to stop negotiating with your old self. When you choose discomfort over excuses, order over chaos, discipline over delay. It happens when you stop being available to your own weakness. Change is not a mystery, it's a decision. And then it's another one, and another one, made every single day, especially when it's hard, especially when no one claps, especially when you feel like nothing's changing. But deep down, something is. Every time you choose to move, you are planting something powerful in your mind. And those tiny seeds, those quiet actions, are building someone new, someone stronger, someone clearer, someone unstoppable. The lotus doesn't bloom overnight. It rises through mud, through darkness, through stillness. But eventually it breaks the surface, and the world sees what was forming all along. That's you, right now. If you're listening to this, I promise, you are not far. You are just in the middle of the process. Don't stop here. Choose one hard thing today and do it. Not for perfection, not for applause. Do it to train your mind. Do it to prove to yourself that you are no longer available for weakness, for chaos, for delay. You are not becoming someone new. You are revealing who you truly are. And if you do that daily, quietly, relentlessly, the world will have no choice but to look at you and say, "Who is this?" And you'll smile, because you already know. Stay grounded, stay consistent, and I'll see you at the top.